2024 has been huge for video game releases. With an enormous amount of AAA and indie titles, there's barely been a week since January that hasn't been dominated by a brand new drop, with some truly excellent experiences as a result, be it a full game or DLC. Although, they have not all been winners, of course. In fact, the games industry itself hasn't had too good a time, with developer layoffs across the board. As we look back at the best titles, let's not forget the cost of it all. So, with that being said, here's our top 25 games of 2024. In a sense, developer Game Science achieved the impossible with Black Myth: Wukong, an unknown studio in Western markets with just 2 credits to its name, both mobile-first strategy games, wading into genre waters long dominated by the likes of Capcom, From Software, Sega, Square Enix, and Ubisoft. What followed has been nothing short of a phenomenon, with Black Myth: Wukong becoming one of the fastest-selling games of all time, over 20 million units shifted across PC and PS5. But success alone does not make for a game of the year. Black Myth: Wukong is a luxurious action RPG experience, dazzling with its stunning visual fidelity and finely tuned battle systems. There are over 80 bosses to encounter on the adventure, which is itself inspired by legendary Tekk's Journey to the West, a trek across distant, deserted lands with little more than a staff and 3 battle stances to protect yourself. Combat is kinetic, encounters varied, and enemy design a constant surprise. Black Myth: Wukong isn't a boss rush, nor is it a traditional Souls-like. What it is one of the finest action games of the year. For those people that developer Vanillaware's Unicorn Overlord speaks to, it practically shouts. A punishing tactical role-playing game and throwback to classic titles from the 1990s with gorgeous, vibrant art and significant mechanical depth, Unicorn Overlord is as much chess as it is a Rube Goldberg machine, with entirely different design sensibilities to most modern video games. Though it makes the game difficult to compare, it also makes it singular. For years there has been a distinct lack of something akin to Final Fantasy Tactics. There are in plenty of tactical RPGs, sure. Fire Emblem is still a going concern, for example, but few manage to come close to effectively combining the just one more battle impulse of moment-to-moment gameplay with a meaningful overarching plot, captivating characters, and incredible art direction. And because this is Vanillaware, it goes without saying that all of the digital food also looks good enough to eat. It's not the most important part of the game, but it is the literal cherry on top. Given the success Capcom has enjoyed over the past 5 years with its string of sublime Resident Evil remakes, it always seemed likely that Konami would want in on the action eventually. Perhaps Silent Hill would be revived for a new generation, Silent Hill 3 or The Room reinterpreted with new technology. After the collapse of Kojima Productions' Silent Hills, there was always this sense that anything was possible, except for the return of Silent Hill 2, a single-player horror adventure that is widely considered sacrosanct. And yet here we are, with a rather stunning Silent Hill 2 remake from developer Bloober Team. What's impressive is how well the studio has preserved the overbearing, sickly atmosphere, a sad and silent crawl into bloodied, unknowable depths. Bloober demonstrates a keen understanding of when to expand the scope and when to pull back to the blueprint, impressing with overhauled combat systems and delightfully dense puzzle design. Whether you were traumatized 2 decades ago, or only now discovering that some scares leave a permanent scar, Silent Hill 2 is as mesmerizing as it ever was. That Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl is one of our Game of the Year picks for 2024 only speaks to the strength of its creative vision. The adventure has this captivating, unquantifiable quality that is difficult to pull away from, even as a prevalence of underlying anomalies try to push you away at every turn. The sickly whir of the Geiger counter, the sharp pulse of the detector, the roar of distant gunfire carried across open plains on irradiated winds. Stalker 2 was born in a war zone and gradually inures you to its own over time. It's truly daunting how expansive this wasteland is. So too the challenges thrown your way by man and mutant alike. Enemy AI is erratic and domineering, shifting weight around improvised combat areas with little regard to your health and safety. Weapons burn through ammunition and degrade to the point of no return at the most inopportune of times every time. Getting lost in the world is a feature, not a bug. And the bugs themselves only strain, not strangle, an otherwise incomparable first-person adventure. During a tumultuous year like 2024, sometimes you just need to laugh, and no game will leave a smile on your face more than the 2-person Yorkshire-based indie studio Cole Supper's Thank Goodness You're Here. Set in the absurdly quirky northern English town of Barnsworth, Thank Goodness You're Here dubs itself a slapformer, where you play as a tiny travelling salesman who can only interact with the world by slapping and jumping their way through life. Putting humour first, the plot follows our small hero performing odd jobs for Barnsworth residents, all of which are either surreally delightful or a setup for a pun. The comedic writing, visual jokes, and brilliant voice acting becoming more chaotic as you complete tasks. But still, everything blends seamlessly together here, creating one of the most polished gaming experiences of the year. Thank Goodness You're Here is genuinely clever, creative, and manages to balance its weird ideas with laughter in a stroke of Monty Python-esque genius. Satisfactory understands that completing the simplest of tasks can sometimes bear the greatest rewards. Developer Coffee Stain Studios has spent the better part of 5 years tweaking the formula of its factory simulation experience through early access, a burgeoning genre that combines the survival crafting elements of Minecraft with wide-scale automation systems, where your dedication to the cause allows for the construction of towering, intertwining machinery that's as daunting as it is mesmerizing to behold. With Satisfactory now available in a more than satisfactory 1.0 state, what you'll find here is the ultimate time sink, an experience where the simple act of connecting resource extractors to refineries via conveyor belts just utterly consumes your attention. Then you'll start digging into the details, tweaking your mini factory to improve efficiency. Soon you'll find Satisfactory to be all-consuming, a industrialization of an alien world infiltrating your dreams. If you've ever been curious about giving wide-scale construction and management games like Factorio a try, but were turned away by the lo-fi style, Unreal Engine 5 powered Satisfactory is the entry point to the genre you've been looking for. You won't play an RPG in 2024 as self-indulgent as Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Then again, developer Ryuga Gotoku Studio has earned the right to flex its muscles at this point, after nearly 2 decades of delivering one outrageous Yakuza game after the other, keenly balancing the pomp and circumstance necessitated by the core adventure against a litany of distractions which range from the menial to the utterly absurd. In many ways, Infinite Wealth feels like the culmination of these efforts, as predictable as it is undefinable. The series' shift towards turn-based combat continues to impress, so too the ways Ryuga Gotoku Studio shatters the model when it sees fit. Absorbing character studies help bring together a narrative delicately threading past and present, and an undeniably ridiculous array of monstrous set-piece encounters ensure that you've never left without something to gawk at. Lush new settings, smartly refined mechanics, and a dedication to distraction unlike any other are just some of the ways Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is able to separate itself in a crowded year of RPGs. For all the success of the revived Modern Warfare framework, it's been difficult to ignore this sense that Call of Duty had lost its way, struggling to innovate after blowback to both historical and futuristic endeavours, and suffocating under the weight of serving the wider interconnected ecosystem. It's impressive then that Call of Duty Black Ops 6 feels like such a breath of fresh air. There's the expansive single-player campaign, which looks beyond the greatest hits, a reanimated zombies offering which finds pure cooperative thrills, and a delightfully robust multiplayer offering. The IW 9.0 engine shift, introduced by Infinity Ward for Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2, laying groundwork for the series' evolution, meant that Treyarch had to rebuild Black Ops' foundational design. Omni Movement was born, a movement system which allows for sprinting and sliding in any direction. It's a massive change of pace, which helps familiar encounters feel fresh again, particularly across such a diverse span of multiplayer maps and Mission Impossible-inspired campaign encounters. In Black Ops 6, you get a glimpse at the future of Call of Duty. There's a puzzle exceptionally early into Lorelei and the Laser Eyes that made me put down my Switch, shake my head, and smile. See a static screenshot and the mesmerizing, haunting visual identity will be immediately apparent. See it in motion, perhaps you'll tune into its unconventional wavelength, an oddly unsettling experience. But the only way to truly grasp at the brilliance of Lorelei and the Laser Eyes' underlying design is to dive into it yourself with a pen and paper close at hand, a thing of pure beauty. Developer Samogo has delivered a truly mesmerizing non-linear mystery. Its handcrafted puzzles are dazzlingly complex in both structure and execution, where eventual success often comes from careful examination as you run it all back in your head. In a game of surreal illusion, you'll often marvel at the ways in which you're able to break its spell. Lorelei is obtuse, purposefully so, but the subtle ways in which it teaches just enough about Roman numerals, strobogrammatic numbers, and zodiac signs to get by speaks to the undeniable quality of the experience. Death comes for us all. That's the principal message developer 11-Bit Studios seeks to convey in Frostpunk 2, in an often destructive and frequently nihilistic city-building survival game where you're left to desperately manage a civilization always on the brink of collapsing. Perhaps the freezing temperatures will do it this time, and a famine the next. Another run ended due to uncontainable illnesses here, and another because of shattered faction alliances there. Frostpunk 2 is beautifully, brilliantly brutal in the best possible sense. Frostpunk 2 successfully builds on the legacy of its predecessor by widening the scope, with survival measured in weeks rather than days. More complex resource management systems allow for rapid expansion, and the management of workforces, industry, and population relationships an ever-present burden. As unyieldingly bleak as it can be, there's something utterly engrossing about the way 11-Bit pushes you to mitigate calamity on a micro level, and manage catastrophes on a macro scale. It'll break your heart time and time again, but that's part of the reason we so thoroughly love Frostpunk 2. What happens when you take one of the most distinctive RPGs on the PlayStation 2 and Persona 5-ify it about 10% or so? You get Persona 3 Reload, one of the best RPG remakes ever. The unforgettable and constant hip-hop soundtrack isn't just intact, but enhanced and expanded, as are the visuals that combine daytime bright blues and whites with the sickly greens and yellows of the midnight hour. It's at this mysterious time of day that balancing social commitments with your school pals pays off. Your choices power up your party and collection of demonic allies as you trawl Tartarus in an attempt to save the town. This mega dungeon is still a grind, but has been much improved in Reload. Still mostly random, new tile sets and a gorgeous art style makes each area you move through feel distinct, and new tactical options in combat makes each encounter more interesting. A dense yet unforgettable journey across both tense battles and its moving story, Persona 3 Reload is one of the best ways to play a true gaming classic. Reinventing turn-based strategy is no easy feat in 2024, which is perhaps why Tactical Breach Wizards wears its inspiration so firmly on its sleeve. There's plenty of Into the Breach's impeccable tight-knit problem-solving in its push-and-shove combat, a dash of XCOM's tightly militaristic setting, and the joy of defenestration that came from Suspicious Development's previous games. But for all the ways that Tactical Breach Wizards hopes to borrow from some of its genre's greatest hits, it's also constantly prepared to be its own thing. Silly, but rarely outright foolish, it's extremely funny, a real genuine sense of ownership running through it that lets you stay grounded in its comedic slant on the precursor to World War V. And as much as it's an homage to some of those genre giants, it's willing to acknowledge where their staple mechanics don't fit. That willingness to adapt to its own needs, whether narrative or mechanical, is a big part of what turns Tactical Breach Wizards from just another strategy game into one of this year's hidden gems. With both Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter returning to fine fighting form last year, there was an immense amount of pressure on Bandai Namco Entertainment to deliver a worthy competitor. The returning King of Iron Fist tournament has been nothing short of a masterclass, regardless of whether you're a seasoned combatant or are only just taking your first steps into the arena. Tekken 8 doesn't just build on solid franchise foundations, it evolves them in a way that frequently surprise and delight. At its heart, Tekken 8 is all about expressive, aggressive action. New universal mechanics like heat enhance abilities once per round to encourage more creative risk-taking, supported by a well-implemented recoverable health gauge and returning rage system. 1 vs 1 encounters are fierce dances across beautifully rendered 3D spaces, the vast 32 character roster available at launch only furthering the depth on display all throughout the experience. Bandai has delivered a series high here in Tekken 8. It's a rich, detailed, and widely accessible fighter that doesn't pull any of its punches. Over the years, we've seen a lot of the RPG genre's rougher edges sanded down in favour of simplicity. Clearly, someone at Capcom didn't get the memo. Dragon's Dogma 2 is an ode to journeys that beat the destination, with its combination of limited fast travel and monster-ridden roads making for some truly unpredictable adventures across the nations of Vermund and Batal. Capcom refuses to hold your hand on this journey, but your party of player-made pawns, creations that range from astounding to horrifying, offer all the company you need. But greatest of all are the seemingly small touches that bring Dragon's Dogma 2 to life. Greatest of the greatest of all is the ability to grab enemies, even those who can fly halfway across the world while you cling on for dear life. But things like destructible bridges, which take time to repair, even if they're essential to your route, creates a living, breathing world that refuses to bend for players. Sprinkle in some phenomenal combat. Did I mention you could grab people? And you've got the makings of an all-timer RPG. It's been a long time since an Xbox Game Studios production really felt as if it were at the cutting edge of interactive entertainment. Perhaps that's why Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 seems so revelatory, with developer Ninja Theory delivering what should be considered one of the best looking and sounding video games of the generation so far. It's a visual and auditory assault on the senses, a world of uncomfortable illusions and hallucinatory rituals enveloping Senua as she faces new threats inland. But Hellblade 2 is far more than a showcase of Ninja Theory's increased prowess with Unreal Engine 5 and advancing motion capture techniques. It's a solemn descent into the depths of Senua's psychosis, as solitary as it is loudly overwhelming. Internal battles remain a focus of this series, but external challenges have been considerably improved. The adventure imbued with faster, more frenetic combat. Every battle a desperate struggle to survive, one cinematic sword swing at a time. Hellblade 2 isn't for the faint of heart, but it is a journey well worth taking. Spend an hour in the company of Animal Well and you may wonder why this seemingly simplistic 2D exploration game has ranked so highly on this list of Game of the Year contenders. There's no combat, no direction given, and exceptionally basic puzzles to solve. A lo-fi Metroidvania with a stripped-backed pixelated visual style. Spend 5 hours with Animal Well and you'll be up to your neck in its brilliance, struggling to comprehend the complexities hidden deep within the depths of this darkened world. It's best if you take Animal Well on its own terms. It's not that dissimilar to games like Fez, Outer Wilds, and Tunic in that respect, really delivering if you're able to resist the urge to seek guidance. This is a game of discovery, after all. An astonishing achievement from a solitary developer. Loops around the world blur together, gadgets transform into tools to decrypt complex cryptic environments, and every inch of progression a new mystery to solve in an otherworldly puzzle box. Animal Well is a pure, singular delight. With every ambitious step forward Nintendo makes with its 3D Legend of Zelda games, each rewarded with a sort of financial success that is sure to make department heads at PlayStation and Xbox jealous, I'm struck with this fear that the 2D titles which ushered the legendary series to life will one day be left behind. It's one of the reasons Zelda Echoes of Wisdom is such a delightful surprise. The first original 2D single-player Legend of Zelda adventure since 2013's A Link Between Worlds. The titular princess takes center stage in an experience which is able to deftly weave the feel of classic top-down Legend of Zelda titles together with some of the freedom afforded by the modern 3D experiences. The ability to conjure echoes of elements encountered in Hyrule is refreshing. So too is the way that developer Grezzo is able to smartly ground all of its puzzle solving and combat around the new system. Echoes of Wisdom is the sort of adventure that reminds you of all the reasons you fell in love with The Legend of Zelda to begin with. Sometimes it's the smallest innovations that can have the largest, longest lasting impacts on a genre. Take what Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown quietly achieved for Metroidvanias this year, introducing the ability to pin screenshots of seemingly unsurmountable traps and pitfalls directly to your map for further scrutiny later down the line, once Sargon unlocks new powers and abilities to further aid in his exploration. Such a simple idea, executed with absolute precision. Navigating the labyrinthian world has never felt so deliberate and purposeful. There's far more to Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown than a few neat tricks, mind. It's an exceedingly enjoyable experience that does well to weigh its challenge between scintillating combat encounters and intuitive puzzle design, all of it draped in an arresting visual presentation and smartly woven narrative threads. The decision to shift focus away from the titular prince proved controversial for Ubisoft Montpellier, but it paid off in the end, giving the studio space to both pay homage to Prince of Persia's humble origins and carry the torch forward to the wider Metroidvania revival. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is where it could have all fallen apart for Square Enix. In the second installment of a planned trilogy, the developer was faced with the undeniably difficult task of threading nostalgia into a reimagined tapestry, balancing the legacy of an identity reveal and a weight of a character's death with a desire to deliver something fresh for a new generation of players. That Rebirth is such a resounding success only speaks to the quality of its production. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a true system showcase for the PS5, one of the best looking and feeling games of the year. It's an audaciously sized experience, a pseudo-open world setup ensuring that there's always some distraction to follow. The experience earned here integral to surviving later game challenges. Battles experience a smart evolution on the action combat framework established by Remake, and sharp writing brings the package together, with standout performances from the core cast ensuring the overarching narrative drips with heart, humour and suspense. In a sense, Square Enix really did achieve the impossible with Rebirth. Here's a hyperbolic statement that still somehow gets to the heart of why Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 works as well as it does. It's almost as if developer Saber Interactive staged an exceptionally elaborate Warhammer 40k tabletop campaign, shrunk you and two buddies down to miniature size, willed the entire setup into existence, and then threw you into the thick of it all. It's the scale of the experience which sells it, the massive environments having this almost toy box quality which ignites the imagination. That you spend your time trudging around these blood-drenched spaces while battling back hundreds of thousands of enemies crawling across everything in sight only adds to the power fantasy. In a sense, Space Marine 2 feels like the modernization of a third-person shooter formula which died in an older console generation. Action is kinetic, weighted, and a little silly as you shred and tear through one foe after the other. Space Marine 2 is not only one of the best shooters of 2024, it's one of the best Warhammer games. Taking a standard pack of playing cards and the scoring system of poker, Balatro ingeniously plays with this innate knowledge to create a roguelike that's all about bending the rules. New cards can be shoved into your deck wholesale and upgraded with tarot cards, making a 4 of a kind a lot easier with 10 aces after all. Planet cards meanwhile increase your scorecard for each hand, meaning careful play can result in a pair outsourcing a full house in no time. Then there are the jokers. Each has a unique rule that completely changes how you play, and developer Local Thunk is constantly adding new ones, from allowing you to skip numbers in a straight to sacrificing other cards to increase a multiplier, and many, many more. They're powerful on their own, but become exceptionally more game-breaking when used in concert. You've always the option to use winnings to tweak and adjust your strategy between rounds, and it's constantly tempting you to retool your plan, making you feel like a true king when your new idea pays off. Who'd have thought that 2024 would be the year that we stopped pining after Persona 6? The last mainline installment, the beloved Atlas RPG series, is fast approaching its 10th anniversary, and yet here we have many of its key creative leads showcasing that the formula is ready to graduate from high school. Metaphor ReFantazio kicks the modern setting to the curb in favour of a wondrous fantasy kingdom, Uchronia, home to a sprawling saga that'll easily arrest your attention for some 100 hours of playtime. Part of that is the visual and UX design, with Metaphor ReFantazio asserting the sort of undeniable style that other RPGs could only dream of capturing. Part of it is the way that characters interplay with one another, breathing life into the complicated machinations of the wider narrative. And then there's the staggering depth to combat. Snappy turn-based battles given life by an outrageously expansive archetype job system. Whether you're a long-standing Persona fan or a lover of fantasy RPGs looking for your next fix, I promise you won't play anything quite as all-encompassing as Metaphor ReFantazio this year. Dragon Age: The Veilguard was almost subsumed by a much larger narrative. In the decade since the release of its predecessor, 2014's Inquisition, BioWare has endured the public cancellation of Shadow Realms, the failure of Mass Effect Andromeda, the collapse of Anthem, and countless difficulties in getting the fourth Dragon Age game into stable production. The studio needed a win, and it needed it badly. That's unequivocally what the Veilguard represents, not only capturing the essence of the series, but energizing it for a new generation. Dragon Age: The Veilguard is a game of meaningful choice counterbalanced by damning consequences. Every decision and opportunity to weigh your relationships with beloved companions and the gorgeous world in which you inhabit. Sharp character writing intersects brilliantly with sweeping narrative arcs, and a shift towards snappier action RPG combat ensures that momentum rarely subsides across its runtime. Regardless of your history with the series, Dragon Age: The Veilguard is the best RPG of 2024. 2024 is the year that Sony beat Nintendo at its own game. It's perhaps fitting that this should occur as Sony Interactive Entertainment celebrates the 30th anniversary of PlayStation, a platform which emerged almost out of spite in the aftermath of a failed collaboration between the two companies. Astro Bot is the nexus point for all of this, a wondrous celebration of the ways that PlayStation transformed the way we play today, and a mechanically pure platformer that rivals the best Super Mario games. Astro Bot is a perfectly weighted experience, where every dash, jump, and dive must be carefully calculated amongst a fray of countless obstacles. It's an exceptional system showcase for the PS5 too, the series once again demonstrating the unique draw of both the DualSense controller and the console's lightning-fast level loading. Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon, Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, and Rayman. These were the platformers which defined PlayStation's past, and it is Astro Bot which so resoundingly reflects its future. Developer Arrowhead Game Studios conscripted millions into the Super Earth Armed Forces, and a desperate battle against invading automaton and Terminid armies has raged ever since. Helldivers 2 got people talking, and against all odds it kept them talking. A tall order in the modern era, where so many disparate live service experiences are vying for our attention. Friendships shattered through hasty extractions, galaxy sectors won and lost to the whims of the community, stratagem commands punched in under a haze of grease and gore. Together, we fought for democracy. When we awarded Helldivers 2 4 out of 5 stars, we failed to envision how this online shooter would evolve, how the galactic map, which tracks global player-based progression, would so resoundingly enrapture our imaginations. A story which changes daily, battle orders engineered in real time across social media. It's the community spirit which has proved transformative, elevating the physicality and ferocity so core to Helldivers 2's underlying mechanical design to new heights. Whether you were battling bugs solo or wading into automaton-controlled territory with friends, Helldivers 2 refined the nature of play in 2024. And there we have it, our top 25 games of 2024. But what do you think of this list? Did your favourite make the cut? Are there any entries you massively disagree with? Let us know in the comments, and as always, stick with GamesRadar for the latest gaming content.